Hello, and welcome to the Change Makerz podcast, a twice-weekly show where we go over Gen Z activism. I am your host today, Cullen Munro, and I am joined by Ken Kensky. Ken, you are a graduating member of SGA, and you are the graduating president of Madison Equality. Formerly, you were the media manager for Madison Equality as well. What can you tell me about what you do in Madison Equality?
So with Madison Equality, our goal is really to create a space for LGBTQ plus students and allies to come together, have a sense of community, basically just have fun with each other, and spread a message of awareness and acceptance.
How long have you guys been around?
So we were originally founded in 1983 as a fraternity, and out of a need for more inclusivity, we switched over to organization in harmony. We were renamed Madison Equality in 2008, so we've been here for a while. We're actually the oldest student-led LGBTQ organization on campus.
Yes, I read about that, and you're one of the oldest organizations on campus too. I mean, that's pretty interesting having, one of the oldest organizations also be an LGBT organization, because you wouldn't normally think that an LGBT organization would be, it wouldn't be as old as other organizations on campuses, nationwide. So, you're also a part of SOGI, correct?
Through my position in Madison Equality, I do a lot of work with SOGI. One of the assistant directors is our advisor, so we work really closely together.
And what have you guys been doing lately? What projects are you guys working on lately? What advocacy are you doing?
How lately?
Well, we could talk about this past week actually, because there's been a lot of division on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the speaker that is being brought to campus, SOGI, Madison Equality, and independent organizers have been working closely together to plan an event to be a demonstration and a celebration of Pride on campus, just to show that we're here, to show students that they have a place, and that the messages of hate that are being spread by some are not what the majority believes.
And let's talk about that. So a lot of things like, one side says this is hate speech, this should not be on campus, and the other side is saying, well, it's it's freedom of speech. These people should be allowed to speak on campus. What's your position on that, and maybe what's the middle ground?
Yeah. So I don't speak necessarily for the whole community when I say this. Of course. But in my personal opinion, I think that this specific speaker should be allowed to speak on campus. I think it is hate speech, but at the same time, it's not necessarily directly advocating for those things like danger and violence. She's very tricky about how she advocates for hate, and so I think that the specific one shouldn't be censored, but I think that at the same time, students and people who disagree should make their voices heard. They have the freedom of speech just as much as she does, and all those First Amendment rights to protest, and
I've heard in this past week, a lot of people have characterized it as being dangerous to trans people on campus with the speaker, this Wheeler, that's coming on. How would you characterize it? Because you're saying that you think that she should be allowed to come on, but you have some concerns about it. How would you characterize the things that she stands for?
I think that they are dangerous ideas. I think that with the security we have on campus, that it may not necessarily be a direct threat. My main concern is people from outside of the JMU community who may support her ideas. I'm worried about violence from them. The ideas that she advocates for are hateful. They are a threat to me and my friends and my community. So I would say, yeah, I am scared, but I think that we have the support of admin who wants to keep everyone safe, of course. And I know that SOGI in particular is working closely with the local police to make sure that everyone stays safe. So that gives me a good sense of comfort.
What kind of conversations would you like to have with people on the opposite side?
That's a good question. What I definitely don't want to do is just be arguing over social media. Social media is a good place for spreading ideas, but it's not necessarily a productive forum for discourse like that. I think these conversations really need to happen in person, between people who maybe are colleagues or know each other. And I just hope that they're open to learning.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the last interview that we had, we were talking about how just the respect for both sides is lost a lot, and that's definitely the case on social media. You know, how do you think we can bring respect back to people who have different beliefs? Do you see it getting better? Do you see us going back to where we can have conversations, you know, without judging each other?
Yeah, I would push back on that a little bit,
Okay.
actually. In the past, I think maybe there was an air of acceptance, perhaps, but I don't think that that was actually the reality, because people were living in the closet, people were actively being discriminated against, and people still are.
That's a good point.
And I think that the majority voices and what we learn in our history classes presents a different view from what the reality may have been. I just think that now, because minority voices are becoming more heard, they're standing up for themselves, that there's this perception that it's become more polarized, when in reality it's the people who've always been there are just finally standing up for themselves.
That's interesting, because it's like you have this group of people who are really standing up for themselves these days, but there's pushback on it. You know, why do you think that recently there's been more pushback than normal? Because a lot of this stuff just kind of blew up in the last few weeks,
Yeah,
especially with transgender rights.
Yeah, absolutely. In recent years, there has been a concentrated effort to push back on transgender rights. I think that specifically like alt-right conservative groups are looking to gain as much support as they can, and they recognize that advocating for what they call traditional family values is a good way to bring in people who may not necessarily agree with the rest of their positions. So I think it is a highly intentional effort.
And, you know, what is it about those, you know, traditional values that you feel like causes them to push back on some of these issues that you see as fundamental rights?
Yeah. Change is scary. Change has always been scary.
Do you think it's happening too fast?
I don't think so.
No.
I think it's time for change to happen. And there's always going to be people who push back against change. I think that that's just a non-negotiable. But the best thing that I think we can do to help people understand and keep moving forward is just to educate people about different identities and about the reality of situations. I think education is the most important thing.
Definitely, and especially, you know, on a college campus when, you know, people are coming from all over the place, and some people are coming from small towns where they've never heard of these issues. Other people are coming from areas where they've, you know, grown up with these issues. So it's an interesting mix. Do you have anything else you'd like to say on this issue? I'm assuming you'll be attending the demonstrations as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I would just say to people out there in the queer community, and trans people especially, that you are loved, and there are so many people on this campus who support you. This event has been incredibly divisive, but I've also seen such an incredible outpouring of support for the LGBTQ plus community. And it's really given me a lot of hope for the state of affairs in the whole country, to see in my community that this is really bringing more people together than it is tearing people apart.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess you could say it's like the light at the end of the tunnel, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for coming on. That was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thank you.